Okay, thank you everybody for attending Carafe for CAFTA this week. This week I'll be doing the presentation and it's on Carafe version 3, actually version 3.1 as of last night. And last reminder that if you're using your video camera, that's perfectly fine, but you might end up on the recording. If you have any questions, like Jeremiah said, use the hands up and Jeremiah and I will try to keep an eye on it and answer your questions as we go. Jeremiah, who's kind of joining me as co-host this week, he's one of the people who authored Carafe and put all the long hours behind it, getting it working. So who am I? Most of you know me, although we're getting a lot of new people since we moved to the virtual platform. One second. So I'm the Senior Technical Project Lead at Soliant Consulting. Also, I'm actually the co-founder of CAFTA. Steve Abrahamson and I founded CAFTA back in 2001. So we're closing in on 19 years of CAFTA. And I've been running the group since about 2004 or 5. I'm not exactly sure when I started running it myself. When I'm not doing FileMaker at Soliant, I like to bike ride a lot when the weather permits in the Chicago area, which is just about now. I play a lot of board games. I'm kind of famous around here for making ice cream, which I do for the Soliant people once a year, and I do for my family a lot. Since this quarantine thing has happened, since the social distancing, we've had some donut ice cream and some Bailey's Irish cream ice cream. All right, so today we're here to talk about Carafe, and a lot of you know Carafe because it's been presented at CAFTA a couple times when it was very early before it was released and once it was released. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Carafe is a free open platform that facilitates creating, sharing, browsing, and deploying JavaScript components in FileMaker. So it's a platform where you can do all your work using these JavaScript libraries to build tools that you can then put into FileMaker with very little difficulty. So how do you get Carafe? We have a website called carafe.fm. That's the address. And you can download the latest version of Carafe there. You can browse the bundles. We'll take a look at this. Also be aware that there are a lot of tutorials there. So if you have it, you're like trying to figure out what to do, Jeremiah's made a whole bunch of videos. Most of them were made with version 2, but they're still very applicable to how it works today. And the videos are really helpful. And then there's documentation, also just written documentation, which can help you implement it. And it also helps you if you want to do some really advanced Carafe where you're building your own bundles and not just using the ones that are already in Carafe. So that's about it for the PowerPoint. Now we're going to go ahead and get on with the demo of how you use Carafe. Like I said, Carafe is here at the Carafe website, carafe.fm. These are the tabs I was telling you about where you have the bundles you can browse. The newer ones come to the top. And if you want to add a bundle, you can do it here. But you have to be logged in. You have to create an account to get on Carafe. And then once you get an account, which is just free, it's easy. You just need a username and password. Then you can add bundles that you've created. The documentation is here. And the tutorials, like I said, are here. And there's a whole bunch of videos that you can peruse and learn from. So what we're going to do is we're going to download Carafe and show you what's in it and give you a couple simple implementations. And then we have time, Jeremiah will show you how to really get down and edit those and do more with it. So the current version, like I said, is 3.1, which was just done last night. And I already have that here. I'll just use it from here. And it's called Carafe Kitchen now. And it's opening on my other screen. So on the left here are your list of bundles. These are all the bundles that come with it. You can narrow it down if you want. And like if you want to look for a map one, here's the Google Maps one that's been in there since the beginning, and we've done some more with that. There's a leaflet map. And on the right here, let's go back to the map one. On the right here is where you have information about the bundle. So there's a preview that comes with every bundle that shows you how it loads with sample data. If you click on the details, you learn a lot more about the bundle. This is all the metadata. And on the right here, you see other parts of it that describe things about the bundle. This bundle has some really good documentation that tells you exactly what you need to load the data to make it run with your data instead of with the sample data. So all that is kind of written right here, and even one of the videos that we have on the Carafe website shows you how to use Google Maps. And then there's some other tabs with the settings and references that you can go through to see more about it. Some of the bundles don't have much in here, and some have a whole lot of information that's helpful. Up here, you've got a few things that are notable. So under source files, you've got these 5. I'll start with this JSON. These files that really matter here are the config file, and asks you, it tells you that it's locked in case it thinks that you might be trying to change something and gives you a warning. So we're just going to look at it. And this just holds all the configuration elements for the bundle. There's also the data, and this is showing you some sample data, showing you how the data will load. And this is just, actually, is this, yeah, so this is all the sample data that you would see on this map. And there's the metadata, which you don't need to worry about at all, but it's basically showing you what was in that first screen with like, if it's locked or unlocked. That's one of the checkboxes here. Offline. And so that's just the metadata showing you what's in that first screen. And here's a template, and this is what you'd edit. And you really don't want to edit it from here, but this is what you'd be editing if you want to start making changes to your Carafe file, besides just using your own data. So there's ways to do that, and we'll show that to you later. But for now, let's go ahead and show you how you implement a simple bundle. So I'll give you a little background first. So what I'm going to show you at first is this little file I made. This is from last year. So to give you a little background. Oh, I keep getting stuff on the other screen. So I made this little file to track running an Ironman. Oh, the layout has script triggers. The YMCA, where I'm a member, they had a thing in April of about 3 years ago where you would spend 3 weeks running a full Ironman using their equipment. So you had to run 26.2 miles, you had to bike 112 miles, and swim 2.4 miles using the pool or stationary bicycles or the spin bikes, and just using a treadmill to run. So do all that indoors, because April is not a great month in Illinois and Chicago to get outside and do this stuff. So they offered it for a couple of years, but then last year they didn't offer it. And so I decided to make it and track it myself. So here's where I just kept a list of when I went and did running, and when I did the biking, and when I did the swimming. So what we could do is use Carafe to show one of these progress bars, or progress. Circular progress. So use Carafe to put one of these so I could kind of track it not only with the numbers, but with the progress itself. So all I need to do is click deploy and give it a name. And you can just use web if you don't name it. But over here, I'm going to put in more than one of these. So I'm going to give it a name so I can use more than one. So I'm going to call the first one run. And I click copy standard script, and it's copied to the clipboard. I go over to my file, and I open the scripts manager. And this is the one that's got all the stuff in it. I'm going to start with some new stuff. All right, so I'll paste it up here. So I just paste the script in. And this is the script that loads. And so I only have to do two things really to get this to work with the sample data. All I need to do is load this script and then put in a web viewer that will show it. And the web viewer, like we said, needs to be named run, because that's what I put. Where does that show? In the
It's in the sample data for one place.
Okay, it's just in the sample data.
Yeah, see in the line 12 has run in the comment, and then also of course in line 25 where it's,
oh, here it is. Yeah, so here it is. This is the line I was looking for. So this is what comes with the sample data. So I named it run. If you hadn't done anything, it would have been named web. So if I go back to here and I put in my web viewer.
That's actually a new, so if you're used to Carafe 4, that's a new feature of 3.1 is the fact that the web viewer name is now addressable at runtime. It's part of the script parameter now. Before it used to get deployed into the script kind of hard-coded. So that lets you reuse the same bundle for multiple web viewers without having to make different copies of it.
One thing you want to do when you put in the web viewers, you want to go ahead and uncheck these bottom three boxes. Just leave the top one checked. And then say OK, and then give it a name up here, run. And I want to save this. And I'm going to have a little problem because I thought this was a fresh copy, but I've got script triggers running. So I'm going to uncheck that so it doesn't run. No trigger on that. Take off the triggers on these. Save that, browse. So remember the script I just loaded was this one right here. So if I run that script, there's the round progress bar that I just loaded. So what it's doing is just loading the sample data because obviously up here I've run the whole thing, so it should be 100%. So let's go ahead and write a script that load our data. So go up here and make a new script. Run data. Okay, so for the run data loader, I found out with this one just from testing that it's important that you commit the record first, or you just stay in the portal and it doesn't update very well. So just do a commit. And let's go and see, this tells us what we need to do. So these are the ones that we need, these are the variables that we need to set if we want to run it ourselves. Otherwise, it's going to just use these numbers every time. And this up here tells me pretty much exactly how I need to set those. So if I copy that text, Command C, go back up to this script, and that's going to be kind of one of the last things we do before we call the bundle script. If I paste that there.
Technically, you could put that expression in the actual parameter of the script, but Phil's doing a best practice here, which is setting a parameter called parameter. And the reason I think that's a great idea is then when you're debugging, stop there before you actually execute the script and see what's about to be sent to it.
Yeah, and I've had to use that a lot. So it's really helpful to have that, see what the parameters you're setting, because oftentimes I know what I'm trying to set, but I have problems with the JSON. Like I haven't set an array right, or I'm missing elements or something. So it's really good to see the parameter before it feeds it to the other script. So I'm keeping the same web viewer name run. But for now, for the bar total, that would be my run goal. And for my bar value, that's my run total run, which is how much I've run so far. And say OK.
And if you have one where you're like loading an array in a loop or something like that, you can also leave those local variables there and actually do a set variable before the parameter, and then you can debug that individually as well.
That's what I actually meant to do, and I realized after I did it that I just skipped a couple steps. But So we're going to call this script the bundle script, and we're going to use parameter. And I'm going to go ahead and do what Jeremiah said, which is set these variables.
If you use the 25 through 27 instead of those ones, you'll get the actual insert texts with sort of sample data and stuff. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you may be wondering, why do we use insert text? Insert text means that you get literal text.
But
So
I'm going to set them. I need to set them though, because with fields. So
yeah, so in that case, you would need the other ones, which I think is what you were going for at first. I was missing.
Yeah.
So, but it can be a nice tip when you're first getting it set up to copy the insert texts so that you have those local variables getting set before parameter, and then one by one you can swap them out with a set variable instead of an insert text, which lets you build up additively to adding your data to the parameter instead of the sample data. Many times the things in the sample data are just hard-coded configuration parameters like colors or something like that, which you don't actually need to evaluate. So that, again, just to explain the reason why you would choose insert text sometimes is because like if you're putting in a block of sample JSON or something, insert text doesn't evaluate it. So you can have a bunch of quotes and stuff in there without worrying about juggling about escaping and stuff like that.
And let's change this back to the okay, and that's pretty much all you need to go ahead and run it with my values. So I do save, and then if I'm up here, if I do that script, so I run the data loader, and there's 100%. Let's say I didn't do this one. Actually, let's go. I don't want to take out last year's, so let's look at this year's. So let's say I run another week. So let's say tomorrow I'm going to run 6 miles. Right now I need to run the data loader. So that's going to make that 38%. But what I did, you saw that I kind of took off of here, was that I made a script trigger on this. And on object exit, just run the data loader. So let's change that. I didn't really run. I only ran half. And you see how the screen was blank when I first came back to browse mode? I went to layout mode and I come back to browse and it's blank. So what I could also do is run a script trigger on the layout. On record load. And when I go to browse mode, it loads. So let's say I want to do one for each of these. Well, you know, one thing I'm going to do here is take the borders off that. Oh, already did. Oh, that was the fill.
I love fill.
There you go. All right, so let's go back here. So I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do the same thing again. And what I could do is make some changes to it, but I'm just going to do another one, show you can run 2 of these at one time.
Well, Phil, actually, I know you didn't rehearse this, but you could actually just change the parameter. So
okay.
You know,
all right.
That's a 3.1 feature, is you no longer have to deploy the same thing twice to use it twice, because you can now pass the
okay.
web.
In my defense, Jeremiah released 3.1 at like 2 in the morning last night, so sorry about that. So if I do the script, and I'm going to duplicate this and call it run call it bike, the bike data loader. And this one is going to have the bike goal, which is a field, and the bike total, bike. Well, this is a lot easier. And then I'm going to make this go to a web viewer called bike. And then it's just going to run with that parameter, which is the bike and the bike goal and the bike total bike. So I save that. And then I come back to my layout and I copy this web viewer, put it in the middle here, and I call this web viewer bike. And I put a trigger on this field. It says on object exit, run bike data loader. See that? So 30 out of the 112 is 27%. If I go out this weekend and ride 20 miles, now I'm at 45%. So let's make another script. So I'm just going to run the bike data loader, the run data loader, and the bike data loader. And then I'll put this one on the layout.
This is a really great best practice, what Phil's doing, which is having individual loaders and then having an aggregate loader. Like if you're doing a big dashboard, I've seen people create one big master script that does all the direct setting of them, but then you kind of get yourself, you have this big long script, and you also end up with having to refactor it if you want to individually set them. So for example, in his case, he wants a trigger on the individual portal as well as the overall screen. Maybe that's, if it's a dashboard, that may not be the case, so it may not occur to you. You want to maybe just have a big load dashboard script, but the individual loader for each individual web viewer is a really smart idea.
I could do the same thing for swim and just make a third one and use the same, run a swim loader script and just call swim web viewer, but I'm going to use a different one. I think I'll use the water liquid fill gauge for the swimming. So come over here. This one loads a little bit different. If I look at the details and the data, it has an animate time and a gauge fill. So it's given 54, which is the 54%. So it's not giving a 0.54. It's giving a whole, the percentage, you know, the 0.54 multiplied by 100. So I'm going to deploy this one. Let's see. Let me do it again. Call it swim. Copy. Come over here. Open this. And I'm going to paste it. And here's this bundle. And I've got a few things to do here. The web viewer swim, I'm just going to use that. It's called liquid fill gauge. Does it have the title, Jeremiah, on it anywhere? It doesn't say that, does it?
Yeah, it is. You mean the title? Oh, which title? The title of the bundle or the title of the web viewer?
Well, that's what I'm wondering here. When it asks for a title, what is the title doing?
Oh, I think that's probably just, it's probably actually a stray config property, which probably should be deleted. It doesn't affect it.
So what I do need to do is do my parameter setting again, and I do need to set the animate time and the gauge value and the swim, which we'll just use. So if I come over, I need to make another one of these, and I'll duplicate that. And this is called swim. Let me take those out.
Yeah.
Parameter. This is what I got from the other one. So I need this variable and this variable. And
Here's
the title, I'm just going to put swim in here, make it easy.
yeah, actually, I think you can leave it blank. You could just leave it as
A
an
little
empty.
shortcut. Oh wait, I'm sorry. It's already here. This is what I meant to do. The web viewer swim. I don't know what. Not sure what
The
this is
title
doing.
one is it's just kind of a yeah, it's bogus. It's a spurious. What you could do just as a time saving device again is since there's that conditional inside the deployed script, which both has set variable and insert text options of all your variables. To save yourself some typing, you can steal those from the deployed script. But it's just a little time saving tip.
Okay, so the gauge value, remember, was kind of that percentage. So what it is, it's the swim, total swim divided by the swim goal. Oops, total swim. And that's going to give me a number like, 0.30, but I need that in 30. So I need to times that by 100. And I'm also going to round this to 3, which will end up giving me like instead of 0.541, it'll give me 54.1. And then there's the animate time. And
Yeah.
not really sure what this number, how much difference it makes. I'll make it. It was the default is 2400, right?
Yeah, that's milliseconds. And here's a case where you don't need it to evaluate necessarily. So here's where insert text would actually typically be fine.
Ah, right. Well, let's do that.
So you could
So
just
go down here, and I can. So you're saying just it's a number, so.
Yeah, you just take this script step and copy and paste it into yours because it doesn't need to be evaluated or anything. It's just a config.
I'm going to make it a lot less. See if I can tell the difference if it's faster waves or something. Okay, I still need to put that on my layout. Swim. Put a script trigger on here. So I'm adding that to my load all data loader script. So the layout will do that when I go to browse, when I load a record. And it didn't load. Here's what I can do to test it. This will just run with this test data. Okay, so that works. What am I doing that's not working here?
It could be that there's some kind of invalid value going into the value.
What was this one? This one was title?
It was just an empty variable. You can make it whatever. It would have been just $title.
Let me try that.
It really should. Now, obviously, it won't matter that you typed those local variables in different case, but when you're talking about JSON and JavaScript, it's a good idea to be sensitive about case.
Hmm.
Well, this is a perfect time to illustrate stepping into the parameter through the script.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that first. Okay, so what is my parameter? Animate time.
Gauge value 125. It looks like it should be okay.
The JSON looks right? Gauge value. Swim.
Try deleting the title. Maybe
I know what it is. Well, it's spelled wrong, but that doesn't matter. Try deleting the title.
Actually, no, the title is being loaded by the sample data. So
I wonder if it matters. If I do it from the sample data, let's. Liquid fill gauge. 54. Swim 5. What was my gauge value? Was it way off?
oh, you know what it might be? No, your gauge value is 125.
125.
Right.
Oh, that's right. I put it in 3. Say that again.
I was saying it's both targeting swim. So that's not it.
Well, I'm not sure here. Let's see. Gauge fill. There might be. Would there be a minimum for that or anything?
I don't think so. I didn't create the bundle, but
One more thing to try.
by any chance, do you have the inspect enabled for your web viewers?
Do I have inspect enabled for the web viewer? No. What's the parameter? So gauge value 50, 25. I'm not changing anything, am I?
Hey, Phil?
Yeah.
Can you go back to your script? I think your perform script's the wrong script.
Oh. Yeah, I am. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Chris. It was a simple thing.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sometimes copy and paste is not your friend.
Yeah. So let's say I swim again. And I swim.
Ain't it always the simple things?
There we go. Thanks, Chris. So except for, pasting the wrong script, you could see how simple that was to put those gauges in there. It really wasn't much work at all. So now I'm going to show you a little more complex one. How are we doing on time? About 20, 25 minutes left. So I'm going to close this one. And here's the second one I want to work with.
Do you want to ask if there's any? I know we're short on time.
Let's stop for questions. I don't have the chat open. I can't see it.
So far, nothing.
No for nothing? Does anybody have any questions?
No questions, except it looks really cool. It's very awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
you guys
you.
have done a great job on it. It's very impressive. And Jeremiah, I don't know if this happened last night when you pushed out the new. I was on the Kanban board on the new kitchen Carafe. It looks like there's an external data reference to the file called Carafe, and it's searching for it rather than Carafe Kitchen.
Yeah, all of the bundles sample data is going to actually have to be revised to accommodate that. I fixed a couple places where that happened, but the bundles themselves are gonna need updating. The file name where it matters, and ones where it matters is a config parameter. So if you're actually trying to use it, you can go in and change that yourself to be Carafe Kitchen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for the pointer though.
Okay, here's the second one I want to demonstrate. I'll do something that has a little more complicated because it's not more complicated to deploy necessarily, but it's just got more complicated data loading. So I'm going to go with this database I made called Fantasy Football, and I spent yesterday loading this with Fantasy Football stats. So what I have is I have all the passer statistics for all 17 weeks of the season, and you'll see it's got there's a lot more fields in this. Actually, if you want to look at this, this is what it gave me for every week. It gave me the rank of the player and their name and who the matchup was, what happened, and it has like their stats, like their completions, attempts, and yards. So I have that for every quarterback who threw a pass last year. And what I'm going to do is use this other one, that's one of our newer bundles. Jeremiah, what does the star mean? I noticed that just featured bundle.
It's just something we added fairly recently to feature stuff so that the newer, because it's sorted by category and then alphabetical, so it's a way to put newer stuff at the top of the default sort.
So this is a really cool JavaScript library that was added by Matt Petrowski. And you'll see what it does is it takes a couple of variables, like you have all your states over here, and then you input sales numbers by channel. So like, how many did Alabama sell of all these 6 sizes with a quantity? And then this breaks it down into percentage. So you can look at either side. So like, let's say Alabama, they sold 33.3% of their sales were light, 63.6% were plus. So you can do it from the state side, or you can do it from the channel side. So you can look at grand, and then you see on the right, like how that broke down by states. And that's just by sending it data that has I'll show you the data.
That is too cool.
So where's the data? So the data, so it's basically just real quick arrays with the channel, the state, and how much, the quantity. And it just sends all these things, and then the JavaScript library builds this array. So I'm going to use this for my fantasy football to like break down quarterbacks per week for yards. And so first thing I need to do is deploy it. So yep, let's use yards and copy the script. I'm just like hesitated because I'm not sure why yards was in there, how it remembered that. I must have done it this morning or something. So I copy it. I go over here, same thing as before. I paste it.
Are you in the 3.1 version?
I think so, because it has.
Yeah.
Because it has the stars. That's why that just showed up. So that's why
Yeah.
one reason I knew it was in 3.1. So I paste the bundle. So this one is a little more complicated than the first one I showed you, because in this case you actually do have to do a little bit more data loading. You have to kind of set up some arrays. And again, here's all these variables that it's setting by default with the sample data. And if not, if I want to set these myself, then I need to set all these. And here's what I'm going to need to set. So again, go in here and copy this. Come up here, make a new script, and we'll call this just call it data loader. We'll do the script first to make sure we get the right one. And we're going to send it the parameter. The variable parameter. Okay. Do we have where's set the parameter?
You can just give it the expression there on line 12.
Let's give it the same one.
Yeah, and then you can individually, you can, if you want, I mean, the way we decided to do it in 3.1 is we hard code the deployed WebViewer object name here rather than make that a local variable. You could make that a local variable if you need to change it at runtime. But then all of the other, everything else that's actually data is still local variables. So you can individually break those out. And this is where maybe starting with the insert text.
That's, yeah, I see that now. I see how that is going to make this a lot easier. Copy those lines.
Because then it'll initially run. And then you can go back in and start commenting one out and loading your real data.
In this case, because we don't, I guess we don't need this yet. We want to make sure we go to the right layout and everything. I need to put my layout in here. I'm going to make a new layout and put in my web viewer. Get rid of this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Uncheck those 3. Call it yards. And save this layout. And then if I go back to my script, make sure I go to that layout before I run this script to load it. So you're saying this should work, right? Because I'm just loading all the stuff that came from the sample?
Yeah, now you're going to get the same thing basically as if you just were directly running the sample because you got all the same data.
So if I do this definitely loads the sample data. And because in my script, if I do the data loader, it's basically running all the same steps. So it's going to load the sample data also. So those both work. So I go back here and I could start changing stuff. Let's do the easier stuff first. So left heading is going to be yards. The right heading is quarterback.
You can see where like a lot of times just the insert text is going to be fine because if you're just putting a static value into the script as a config, you don't need it to be an expression. Then as soon as you need to graduate to one, you can. It's easy. You just set the same variable with an expression instead.
Weekly yards. Those, and I'm gonna, no, actually I'll leave that alone. Okay, so let's just save this and run it. So see how it changed?
Yeah.
So it changed the yards on the left. Weekly yards is the title. Here are the quarterbacks. That's how it's gonna load my data.
Was somebody trying to interject?
Yeah, I thought I heard something.
Maybe it was unintentional.
Okay, so what I'm going to have, let's do the data next because then the other stuff will make sense. So this is the part where we're going to kind of do our data loading where we have to actually load data from records. So I need to go to the right layout first. And that's going to be any layout that's based, they're all based on the same thing, but I'm going to go to the one that has the table view. It's kind of easier to see.
That's also a good point worth pointing out is like, even if you make your web viewer based on the one where you're going to loop, it's usually a better idea to go to a layout that doesn't have the web viewer on it because then otherwise you can, like constantly triggering the web viewer. So it's better to go with the loading context.
So go somewhere else just to load the data.
Whether you do it in an off-screen window or however you want to do it, like any typical way of maintaining a found set and not doing it on the layout, on the end layout.
And I'm going to do a couple steps here. When I brought all this data over, there were a lot of players who were like running backs who threw a single pass. And so I don't want those. So I'm going to like do a find to omit those. Just it makes the graph a lot more readable, and I don't really need all those. So to show you what I mean, If I show all, see like this Luke Falk, I'm not even sure who he is. He like didn't, I probably threw like one pass that week. So I have a number of quarterbacks I've gone through here and marked them with ones just to make this more readable, not cluttered up with single pass players. Okay, and then this is something Jeremiah taught me. I don't think it's necessarily necessary, but I kind of like it because it helps type the variables. So the data is going to be in an array. So I just set it to an empty array and it kind of types the variable. I'm going to set a few variables. Let me tell you what they are. So the data is going to be the whole set of data. But inside that data are arrays of the player's data. So that's another variable. So as I go through a loop, I'm going to set the player's data each time.
Another reason why starting out with an empty array when you're doing an array loading is actually kind of important on the line 9 particularly, is in if you're going to actually do a set value on an uninitialized array and you just do like, because JSON's set element has a conflation of index, key, and actually JSON path. If you set it on an uninitialized variable, it will assume you want an object and it'll quote it and turn it into a key as opposed to just putting it in an array location.
Here's another really important thing. So we're building an array. Usually we do a counter. I would start with 1 and count up, but arrays, the first value in an array is value 0. So we need to start our counter with a value of 0. And then I'm going to go to the first record. And I'm going to loop through them.
You can see on line 26 what his goal is. It's an array of arrays, which is a little bit of an unusual structure. There's no key names in it. So it's just each member of the array is another smaller array that only has 3 members, which is a little less typical than you usually would see, like usually an array of objects.
But it's not uncommon either.
It's not uncommon, yeah. And just it's talking about arrays and objects, one can nest in the other in JSON. And if you see square brackets, it's an array, which means there's not going to be any property names. Curly brackets means it's an object, which means there's going to be
an array. Here's an array, and here are objects. So these colors are objects, elite that, and this is an array with just here's 0, and here's 1, and here's 2. So let me set the player variables. I go through the loop. Set element, and it's player. And I come down here, and this is the way we like to write these, is with the semicolon in the next line. It makes the lines really clean. And the first one is going to be the week. And that's going to be weekly stats is my table. And I ended up with 2 weeks. One is a number and one is kind of the text, because it just sorts better on the chart.
You need to make the address be 0, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, this is an array. So the first value of the array is the week. And this is a string. And yes, they don't complete for you. So I'll make my next 2. So my one value in the array is going to be the player, which I think is name player. And my 2 value is going to be their actual yards. And that's a number. YDS. There we go. So I'm going to go through this loop, and each time I'm going to build a player. And then what I need to do is add that to the final data set array. Sorry, wrong V. Actually, I'll paste that. That's not exactly what I want, but it's instead of a 0, it's going to set a new value each time through the loop. And so that's where I use my counter, which starts at 0 and then counts up. And then what it's going to do is put in that variable player, which has my smaller array of just that player's numbers. And then this is an array. So I'm going to set this array with the whatever value, first, second, third, fourth player value array. And then I need to go to the next record. And then I make sure I set my counter variable 1 higher. All right, so that should do it. I'm not sure what's going on with the colors, but let's see. I think they'll just come out gray. So I think that's pretty much what I need to do, except for kind of coming back and doing these settings better. So I do S. Let's just run it and see what happens. Weekly yards.
You overwrote it. You still have the insert text.
That would make a difference. Take that out. Now run it. That's weird. There they are.
Oh, try reinitializing it. I've occasionally seen just to go layout mode and back to browse mode or whatever.
Phil, did you actually, I saw you set the counter and you were advancing that, but is there an exit condition on that loop?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Exit. Yeah, I do that. I exit before I do the counter. If it doesn't exit, then it ups the counter by 1. Well, let's see. I'm not sure if, what were some of these? Let's see.
You want me to copy and paste the weeks to you? So you don't have to reformat them all?
Yeah, why don't you do that? That would be good. Do I need to, the right hand padding?
The padding, if there's a problem with that, it's actually, that's a bug.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's debug it.
Here's the colors.
All right, so what do we have here? This is what the data looks like. That looks good, right? That looks like a good array.
It does. Try adding the colors, 17 colors, because maybe it's the fact that it has.
The colors aren't the same. Okay. Did you clip that to me?
Uh-huh. So basically, there's an array, but it was working before, so.
Oh, it's still running.
When Phil first set it up, it was all coming out in gray, black, basically, because we didn't have custom colors.
Let's try it now.
Wow, the colors are going in there. There's just something janky with the. I see you put the 75 offset. It's just something with the initialization isn't working, obviously.
So why is it, I mean, it's just a display issue, right? Because the numbers are all right if you get it to go like that.
It seems to be something.
Is it
Yeah.
this?
I'm scratching my head over what that could be. Go back to the initialization, or go back to your loader script again.
There it is. Kind of.
Oh, maybe it's just not quite big enough. Try making it taller vertically. Maybe there's some kind of thing where
Well, what I did this time to fix it was it was not anchored to the.
Yeah. So make the window, or yeah.
Give myself a bigger window. It's a lot of data.
There's too much data. I mean, there's obviously kind of an issue with the way that the library is set up.
There you go. So here's how week 5 came out. Except I got a really big web viewer now.
Yeah, go a little taller with your window. There you go. Oh yeah, see the players are still overflowing down the bottom.
Okay.
And
yeah, that's why I got rid of some of the players who didn't play much, but you still end up with a pretty good list.
Yeah. Actually, show them without the adjustment on the right-hand margin, because you already went in and put that without showing what the problem was.
Okay. So we learned Jeremiah kind of helped me do this, that the padding on the right needed to be set. It wasn't something we could set in the initial version of this bundle. So we set it to 0 like it used to be. This is the right label pad. Do S, and then we run that script. You get this. They're all crammed on the side, so having that extra padding makes it work a lot better.
The default is kind of like for a little short name, but since he wanted to use longer names, it required essentially a customization to the underlying JavaScript. But a lot of times you find out that something that you need to modify in the JavaScript is something you're going to want to be able to modify at runtime. So that's when you can, with Carafe, you can go in and refactor to expose a parameter as a runtime parameter.
Okay, this is really cool. I've got my resolution on this monitor turned pretty low, so I can't make it any bigger.
Yeah,
I can get rid of the header.
Maybe zoom down the size. Go to 75% on your layout.
I still need a bigger web viewer.
Oh, that's weird. Isn't it connected to the edges of the screen?
How's that? There you go. There's everybody. So you can tell who was best each week, and you can tell when a player had his best week. The beard and mustache were really going on week 17 and week 5 for Gardner. All right, it's 11 o'clock. Does anybody have any questions, or do you want to see Jeremiah's? Jeremiah, you want to show a little bit about how to do editing?
I had a quick question.
Go ahead.
So in the same scenario, if you were to hover over, let's say week 4, is there a way for the data on the right-hand side to sort based on like the percentages, like the highest percentage on the top versus the alphabetical in the records? But if I go to week 5, it would obviously then resort for percentages to put the highest in the top.
Well,
that's a great idea.
Yes, there is. However, that would be counter to the intent of the sand key, which is to keep the order, and that's why you get the disparate thicknesses, so that you're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So if you kept on rechanging the order, it would kind of like recross the wires. It wouldn't really be the intent of this visualization. But I mean, that being said, if one of the points of this is that Matt Petrowski came across this as a sample. This is actually like a fairly obscure D3. D3 is a JavaScript visualization library. And so somebody made this example that implements sand key diagrams on top of D3, and it was just sitting out there somewhere where he discovered it online and wanted to incorporate it in FileMaker, so he did. And then that meant that, you know, once there was some working HTML document that was loading the libraries, that it could be bundled. And so if there's time, I could actually show a little bit about what that looks like if you were going to start working with it more on the code level.
Do you want to do it, Jeremiah?
Sure.
All right. Do you want to direct me, or do you want to turn the screen over to you?
Probably it'd probably be easier just to share over to me.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it. All right. So let's just go ahead and take the latest version of Carafe Kitchen that I just downloaded and open it up. I'm going to bring it back onto this monitor over here. And as it happens, it's focused on this diagram already. So you have a couple of options for working with the code. The first option is to use this online editor, which is called Code Sandbox. So if we click Edit, Bundle, and Code Sandbox, there was a little bit of help text that displayed right over there, which shows you kind of a couple of the tips that I'm going to point out to you right now, which is when you first, because of the way Code Sandbox works and the way we implemented it, we essentially made our own little web viewer, or basically this is a web viewer over here. But we put in a little like toolbar, and then the thing which displays whatever the bundle is live over there, but the focus is on this wrapper HTML. So you need to navigate away from that and look in the SRC. So your actual code typically is in this template.carafe. So if we wanted to make any kind of modifications to this, let's just make something simple initially. So see how we have, there's a couple of concepts which are worth pointing out. So first of all, in the metadata for a bundle, there's a property in here called bookend. The default bookend is actually double underscore, but occasionally, and you can see actually it didn't completely refresh because it's still loaded okay. But when I typed it, it refreshed the thing on the side, but not enough to break it. If I were to save this, and it's going to break eventually, it should break. Let me reload this. Yeah, so once I click reload over here, it's still telling me I have a valid bundle, but it's not displaying anything over here. And if you want, you can do the console and take a look at, bring this back over on the screen, your typical techniques for debugging in a web browser still work. And it's telling us that there's some problem with this syntax error or whatever, because we've said in our metadata that we still have this default double underscore bookend, but in fact in the template we're using these double tildes. And the reason I'm pointing that out is it's the reason it's configurable is occasionally you end up with some kind of a collision in the library itself where double tilde isn't, or rather double underscore is used for something else. And so if you run into that, you can define whatever you want your merge field bookends to be. So in this case, it's a little bit of an unusual case because we have tildes instead of underscores, but each one of these tilde, tilde, name, tilde, tilde represents a merge field. So this is basically HTML, but it's got all these merge fields in it. So it's more like it's actually an HTML template. And then once the renderer runs, it swaps out all of these merge fields for variables, which can come from one of three places. You can have variables that come from your data, which is what Phil was working with. So for example, here's a colors. This key in the data, in the sample data is colors. So that basically this represents a sample parameter that would be passed to the script in FileMaker. So if we collapse these, you can see we've got colors, data, left heading, so forth, all the way down to title. So these are the things that you can set at runtime in FileMaker. Place number two is libraries. So this actually is a fairly new feature in Carafe version 3. It came out in 3.0, but the ability to put library code in your bundle itself means that you can then move away from having to use CDNs, which means that a lot more stuff can run in offline mode, where you don't, if you needed it to work, you know, on an iPad or something like that, and you were going to have intermittent connectivity, it could still work if you had an offline capable bundle. So in this case, D3 and Viz.js, and then of course there's some CSS and a license and stuff go in there. And the third place is in the config itself. So what the config does is it defines where each of the keys that are going to be used as merge fields should be sourced from, in essence. So you basically have a key name, and then each key has a source property, which can be either data, libraries, and then in this case we don't have any. Oh yes, we do, config. So the person who pointed out that the file name when you click the script was wrong. Here's an example of how you would fix that. So the bundle had the sample data with Carafe because that used to be the name of the file that we use for Carafe Kitchen. And so actually now if I click this and say open in FileMaker Pro Advanced, well, it did an FMP URL, file name, I don't want to get off on a tangent on that. I think there's also a script name. Maybe not. But in any case, that's the point of the config, is to tell if it is a library, then it requires this path. And if it is sourced from the config itself, it requires a value. And there's a validator. I'll actually just show that. There's an easy way to access the validator right here is if you click on the share button, it will actually run the validator. Also, if you look in here, it's running the validator. So if we, for example, get rid of the value on a config and click save and then reload over here, it's gonna tell you that it's not valid and actually prints out what the validation error is. And so this is a little arcane. Maybe eventually we'll get it so that this is presented a little neater, but this actually just comes from the schema validation library. And you basically kind of have to just read through it like a stack trace and find out, oh, missing property value in config file name. So go back and restore that, hit save, and reload this little browser over here, and we should be back in business. So now that you know where you can, how you can define additional merge fields, that's really powerful if you're not going to get into necessarily setting up bundles from scratch and stuff like that, If you wanted to go in here and tweak, like what we actually literally did for Phil's presentation. So for example, sales breakdown wasn't initially a variable. So what we did is we said, hey, where the text sales breakdown was literally here in the template, we turned it into a merge field. We went into the config and we added the title that's sourced from data. And then we went into the data and added the different, added some sample text, but this could be like, you know, yards breakdown. As soon as we save that, it should re-render over here. And this is basically the data.json file is representing, when you're in this type of mode, it's representing what you'll be generating in FileMaker. So it's like a proxy for what you're injecting. So it's when you're in bundle definition mode, this is what you're doing is creating like sample data over here. And then that ultimately, once you deploy it, will be done dynamically by your FileMaker script.
There's a question from Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, what's up?
He wanted to know what the libraries or where the includes are stored.
Oh, well, so basically there's this libraries directory. It is, if you're getting into, oh, that's the wrong package.json. So in the library itself, oh, I guess we don't deploy it here. So let me actually answer that question in a roundabout way by demonstrating a couple things first, which will take me to VS Code, which is a little bit more powerful place and gives you a few more options. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it just with this one modification that we made, which is changing the sample data here. I'm going to say send to Carafe, and this is going to actually perform an FMP URL. And then I'm not going to overwrite this. Actually, it's telling me, hey, this name and version already exists. I'm just going to say, I'm going to create a new one. And I want to just create a new name because I'm not going to create a new version right here. So think of it like this. If you're going to fork a bundle for your own purposes to just adjust some configurations and stuff like that, you're not really creating a new version. You're probably creating a new use case. So in that case, you know, you might actually come over and say this is going to be sand key. You know, like if let's say Phil's thinking he was going to do this for yards or whatever. You know, like if there's some reason you're going to actually modify the template, but without actually modifying the core functionality, you can choose to just give it a new name. And in fact, you could, since this one, we actually now have an attribution thing here. So the parent is when you fork it is maintained. So the parent was the Sankey bundle version 1.1 by Matt Petrowski. So you can actually feel free when you make a new one to write your own name in there. So let's just say this is, because this is you're kind of the one who's creating this one, and you don't have to worry about like not blowing away the original creator, and you can say, you know, thanks to Matt or whatever you want, and sort of maintain that honor system of acknowledgement. So in this case, we've got our new one going here, and I want to demonstrate our old. Let's see first. So let's just go to send key because they both see. So we have our old one and our new one. So they're both there. And in this case, I want to demonstrate the other mode of editing, which is I want to go to local editing. So in this case, I'm going to choose my desktop, and I usually put these into a Carafe bundles folder in my place where I have my Git repositories. But I'll just make a folder like as if, you know, here on my desktop just for fun. And then you actually need to make a folder for the project. So I'm going to call this Sankey yards. Actually, you know what? I just realized I might be worried about the path. Just for fun, I'm gonna do one without spaces. I don't know if this is still a bug in the that would bite me right in here, but example Carafe bundles. And just in case it is, I'm gonna not put spaces in my folder name there. And then this one is going to be Sankey yards. So what it's going to do is save what we were looking at in Code Sandbox in this folder. So you're basically defining and picking a folder to go ahead and open the project up. And then, is there a question?
Yeah. So you had to. Did you make the second folder inside so that if you do multiple projects, they don't collide into each other, so they don't all end up in the same folder?
Yeah. Normally, I would already have that top level folder, and I would just put it in there. I would just go in and make a folder for my project in there. But there's a couple of different ways you can get to that. So I'm just going to go this way because this is what I tend to like to do. But so there's, if I cd into my Carafe bundles, example Carafe bundles, there's my Sankey yards. And if you're a VS, you should be a VS Code user. If you, I really highly recommend VS Code, which stands for Visual Studio Code, which is the free version of Microsoft Visual Studio, which is a really, really first-class JavaScript editor and what has become essentially a de facto standard for everybody who's playing with JavaScript in the FileMaker community. So if you've already got an editor, you're really super comfortable with it, and you love it for JavaScript, that's fine. But if you are looking for one, even if it's just for looking at JSON in a more convenient editor, and you're not going to get into any actual JavaScript, it's free, it's really powerful, I recommend it. So I'm going to just use, there's a command line configuration you can have in there which allows you to address VS Code with just the shortcut code, and then you can give it a path. So I'm just going to say code Sankey yards, which is going to actually is going to launch that folder in VS Code, which is just kind of a convenience thing. But I'll close the welcome screen. And now looking over here, you can see it looks basically, in fact, literally is, this is VS Code. So in fact, you see there's a VS Code directory in here with settings. So the online editor, believe it or not, Code Sandbox actually is, the VS Code is a pluggable editor. So we're literally talking about the same editor, but here on the desktop version, you have a little bit less complexity in terms of all the browser context and stuff like that, and a lot more power. So I actually, personally, I will always go this route. And I think, you know, as a power user or as somebody who's going to really get into it, this is the way that the Code Sandbox is a convenience option. This is the actual legit first-class option. So you'll recognize the project looks exactly the same. There's libraries. So this was the question you were getting at, Jeff, I think.
Yes.
So this is this is an interesting bundle or an interesting packaging problem that we had to deal with in defining the way bundles work, which is that there is no file system in the web viewer. You can't have actual referenced includes. So what we're doing here is we're still giving you the option to put in separate library files, but it's mainly to clear out your template. And you notice those still have to have a merge field name, and they all get inlined into your template.
Jeremiah, first of all, I want to thank you for a top level first class answer to a base level question, but I learned some good tips along the way. The VS Code, that sounds like a really good avenue for me to explore. Just from the perspective of somebody who has incorporated JavaScript into a web viewer in a very manual way, I can see from your style tag, and when I asked, are those the includes? So usually from the context of an HTML implementation of that JavaScript, you will see in the header of the HTML all these includes that are resources for the JavaScript to call.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is in fact what's happening. I see it because you've got, presumably you'd plug in a CSS path there. Well, if it was HTML, it'd be a path, but it would be a field in FileMaker if you stored it locally, so it could work. But I get it. I see how the structure is in the libraries. Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, so just to kind of put a bow on what you're saying, this file style.css has some custom CSS in it for the purpose of displaying this stuff. This would actually work perfectly well if we copied all this content and went over to the template and got rid of the merge field and pasted it in right there. And I'll just format that. Oops, no, I want format. So this is synonymous. This is what's literally happening when Carafe runs, when it renders. It's taking the contents of that file and sticking it into where the merge field is. That's what's happening for all three different types of configurable merge fields. So we'll get rid of that back again. So here's the style merge field. So just think about it. That is where that content of that style file is going to end up. Same thing with the D3 library. This would work actually. This literally will be essentially copied and pasted into your template before it runs. Right there where the viz thing and the D3 things are.
This is really sweet because it's removing all of the very complicated substitute commands, calculations that I've been putting in manually. If you follow that, that's how I was doing
That's exactly what this is. This is the concerted effort to standardize the substitute process.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Very cool.
Basically abstract it all the way into actually this bundle schema that let me see if I can actually see it here. There is okay, so see this meta schema right here? So we've defined actually this is actually the second version, and we worked with Carson Lind and the people at Geist to define a schema. So basically your editor, if you include these schemas in there, is aware of what is valid. So for example, if I deleted, because I have the schema in the metadata file here, and this is how the validation works. If I deleted a required property of the metadata, like name, and saved it, I should get an validation error somewhere. Yeah, right here. Missing property name. So it's down to that validation of what is this consistent standard bundle, the envelope for all this stuff, because then when now you have a consistent envelope, now you can automate all of the substitution stuff that you were alluding to. I know we are very tight on time. Phil, do you want to interject anything or?
No, I just wanted to kind of wrap up so we can finish by 11:30, which is kind of a scheduled ending time. Does anybody else have any other questions before we finish it up? All right. Want to go? Can I take are you done? Can I take the screen back?
There you go.
Oh, still got that up. Okay, so just to finish up here, I want to thank everybody for attending our meeting today. It's been great having everybody show up every couple weeks for these things, and I hope you guys learn a lot. It seems like it's going really well. I especially want to thank a few people, Jeremiah, who's been talking with me, and also Jesse Levere, who the two of them, they're the ones who are the brains behind Carafe, and they're the ones that did all the work on it. I'm just
Applause, applause, applause. Great
I'm just
stuff.
like the weatherman up there pointing at a green screen. That's all. Also, I wanted to make sure I thank Pro Football Reference because they have, most places charge for stats, and they have free stats available for downloading, and they just asked for me to give them a referral, which I'm doing right here. So it's a good place if you do fantasy football to go get all the stats from all games. As usual, we'll post a recording of this at the Soliant TV, which is on YouTube. And you can get that through a link on our website. We'll probably link to it from the Carafe website too. And I'll post a link from the Meetup website. And our next meeting will be on June 1st. And I'll get a meeting notice out for that soon. I think there's one already up there, but as far as topic, I'll get that out soon. And I want to thank everybody again for coming.
Cool. See y'all.
Great. Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Thanks
This is
again.
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.